Good morning, year one and year two. I hope you're all really well, and I hope you've had a really good week. I hope you've done loads of home learning if you are at home, and I hope that you've been doing some really good work if you've been in school. So I get to do your assembly again today, and today it is on something called National Storytelling Week. So this week, you may or may not know, is National Storytelling Week. So what is that? So it started on Sunday and it goes on until next Saturday, the 6th of February. And it is a week for celebrating storytelling and encouraging people to tell their own stories. National Storytelling Week takes place in lots of places, such as storytelling clubs, theatres, museums, schools, and hospitals. And it may also take place in places like a library, or there might be meetings in parks where they do that sort of thing. Now, this year it will be a little bit different because they won't be able to do lots of storytelling celebrations. So that's why we're doing a bit of an assembly about it. So what are stories? Now, I've got a couple of questions that are going to pop up. So if you just pause your video, you can have a discussion with somebody in your room to try and answer these questions. So first of all, what do you think stories are? Are stories always written down? And who do you think tells stories? So off you go. Try and answer those questions. Super. Okay, so what are your favourite stories? Now, I bet loads of you love reading books. I bet you love listening to stories or listening to your mums and dads read you a book, maybe before you go to bed. So just have a little chat with someone around you about what your favourite story might be. I don't even know how you picked your favourite story. I know that I love so many books that I think I would find it really hard to choose just one as my favourite book, my favourite story. So I hope you were better than I was at that. So why do we tell stories? People have used stories for thousands of years to communicate, and we all tell stories every single day. We tell stories about what we have been doing at school, stories about funny or scary things that might have happened to us, about what we've seen on the TV. So I bet the first thing your mums and dads do when they see you is ask you what you did at school that day. And when you're telling them, that is actually you telling a story. Many stories that we know have been told for hundreds of years. Fairy tales and myths were told by people long before they were written down. So why are stories and storytelling important? Storytelling helps people to feel close to each other and to become friends. Storytelling helps people to understand the things that happen in the world. Stories can teach us lessons, so they might have a moral, and that's when it teaches you something at the end of the story. They can be warnings, they could be funny, they might be scary, or they might even explain things to us. They could be fairy tales and even myths. And storytelling is also pretty fun. So I'm going to try and show you a video now of a man who is going to tell you a story. Now, we won't have time to watch the whole story, so if you do want to finish it and watch it in your own time, I will put the link in the box below the video on YouTube. So whilst you're watching it, have a think about what did you like about how the story was being told, and what do you think makes a good storyteller? So I'm just going to try and pop that on for you now. Okay, sorry. Okay.
Inside of a house by the edge of the forest there was an old man and there was an old woman, and they lived in that house and they lived very well. But there was one thing that always made the old woman cry, because she'd never had any children of her own, never a baby to hold in her arms. And one day she took some butter, she took some sugar, some flour, some treacle, some milk. She mixed them all together and rolled them all out and cut out the shape of a gingerbread man. She had some currants for its eyes, a cherry for its nose, and some nuts that she placed for its mouth. And she put it inside of the oven. But before she put it into the oven, she said out loud, "I wish that this gingerbread man could be real, and he would live inside of our house." Well, she put it inside of the oven and closed the oven door shut, and out she went to help the old man to dig in the garden to grow the flowers. But then she listened and she heard a voice, and the voice shouted out, "Help!" And she looked over there, and she looked over there. She looked up, she looked down, she looked all around, and she knew that the sound was coming from inside of the house. So she opened up the door and went inside. She looked under the chairs, she looked under the tables, but then she realised that the sound was coming from out of the oven. So she opened up the oven door, and who was there dancing up and down on his gingerbread feet but the gingerbread man? He said, "Help me, help me, help me, I'm hot, 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 hot." She rubbed her hands together and said, "Oh, gingerbread man, you could live inside of our house, and you could be our little boy."
Okay, so I wonder if you could have a go answering those questions that were on the PowerPoint. Let me pop that back up for you. So, what did you like about the story and the way the man told the story for you? And what makes a good storyteller? So just pause the video and have a little think about those questions quickly. So I think what I liked about the way this man told the story is I really liked his use of actions. I think it was really good the way he looked in different areas. He looked up, he looked down, lots of different actions whilst he was telling it, made the story quite engaging to listen to. I liked that he put on some voices for some of the characters, and also that he did some sound effects. He used his voice to make some sound effects when the door creaked open. So what do you think makes a good storyteller? Now, I think it's really important to make sure that your audience, the people that you're reading to, are really paying attention. So you do want to make it a bit fun. You want to make it a bit more interesting than just reading it in a very sort of dull kind of way. I think you need to be clear. And I also think you need to go quite slowly. You don't want to speed through your story, because otherwise people might not understand what the story is about. So happy storytelling to all of you for this week. I was thinking maybe if you could tell your mum and dad what your favourite story is, and maybe if you've got a photo of your book or a photo of the story, you could send that into your school email address, so your class email address, because I know that Mrs. Mackey would love to see some pictures of you with your favourite story. It might be that you don't have a copy of your book, so you might just be telling your story to someone in your house. So again, you could have a photo of you doing that. Now, what I thought might be quite nice is for me to read you one of my favourite stories. Now, I loved this book when I was your age, and I actually still love it. I think it's a great, great story. So this book you might have heard before, and it is called Winnie the Witch. Okay. Winnie the Witch lived in a black house in the forest. The house was black on the outside, and it was black on the inside. The carpets were black, the chairs were black, the bed was black, and it had black sheets and even black blankets. And even the bath was black. You can see that picture kind of. Winnie lived in her black house with her cat, Wilbur. He was black too, and that's how the trouble began. And you see Wilbur there, over here. Black cat in a black house. When Wilbur sat on a chair with his eyes open, Winnie could see him. Well, she could see his eyes anyway. But when Wilbur closed his eyes and went to sleep, Winnie couldn't see him at all, so she sat on him. When Wilbur sat on the carpet with his eyes open, Winnie could see him. She could see his eyes anyway. But when Wilbur closed his eyes and went to sleep, Winnie couldn't see him at all, so she tripped over him. One day, after a nasty fall, Winnie decided that something had to be done. She picked up her magic wand, waved it once, and abracadabra! Wilbur was a black cat no longer. He was bright green. Now, when Wilbur slept on a chair, Winnie could see him. When Wilbur slept on the floor, Winnie could see him. And she could see him when he slept on the bed. But Wilbur wasn't allowed to sleep on the bed. So Winnie put him outside in the grass. Winnie came hurrying outside, tripped over Wilbur, turned 3 somersaults and fell into a rose bush. When Wilbur sat outside in the grass, Winnie couldn't see him, even when his eyes were wide open. Can you see him over here? He's camouflaged in the grass. Means he's the same colour and you can't see him very well. This time Winnie was furious. She picked up her magic wand, waved it 5 times and abracadabra! Wilbur had a red head, a yellow body, a pink tail, blue whiskers and 4 purple legs. But his eyes were still green. Now, Winnie could see Wilbur when he sat on a chair, when he lay on the carpet, when he crawled in the grass, and even when he climbed to the top of the very tallest tree. Wilbur climbed to the top of the tallest tree to hide. He looked ridiculous and he knew it. Even the birds laughed at him. Wilbur was miserable. He stayed at the top of the tree all day and all night. Next morning, Wilbur was still up the tree. Winnie was worried. She loved Wilbur and she hated for him to be miserable. Then Winnie had an idea. She waved her magic wand and abracadabra! Wilbur was a black cat once more. He came down from the tree purring. Then Winnie waved her wand again and again and again. Now, instead of a black house, she had a yellow house with a red roof and a red door. The chairs were white with red and white cushions. The carpet was green with pink roses. The bed was blue with pink and white sheets and pink blankets. The bath was a gleaming white. And now Winnie can see Wilbur no matter where he sits. And that is the end of Winnie the Witch. Hope you enjoyed that story. And like I said, I'd love to see what your favourite stories are. So maybe pop a picture into your email address. So have a really good week. I hope that you do loads more learning and lots of storytelling and read lots of stories with your mums, dads, grandmas, grandpas, whoever you live with. So see you soon. And I will be back next Wednesday for another assembly. Goodbye.